Of course we are. Let me wait for the other platform to catch up, and I think we are good to go. Want me to do it? All right, we're going to get into real estate investing. I'm a trainer, y'all, so I teach people how to invest. I don't really get into all the nonsense conversations that you see on these social media platforms. I think there's a lot better use of the time. So my name is Otis James. I'm a full-time real estate investor out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the founder of the 4 Data Points Academy. It's a real estate investing training platform, the only one that doesn't have an end date. We are on multiple platforms. We are on live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and which one am I missing? Oh, Clubhouse. I got Clubhouse on the side. So if you folks on Clubhouse have any questions, feel free. I'll leave that screen up. I'm a long-term hold investor. I've consulted on multiple projects, domestic and abroad. I spent the better part of 20 years in the multifamily commercial industry on the operations side. I left at the corporate level, on the non-real estate side, on the entrepreneurial side. I took just under $600 one day, created a company that went on to generate seven figures. I used that business model twice. I am a former mortgage broker. I'm licensed as a real estate broker in California and Georgia. I'm licensed in insurance. No, I'm not in the insurance business, but I use it to leverage real estate. So I got licensed in it so I can speak intelligently about it. I'm an entrepreneur, a whole bunch of things, every aspect of real estate that you can imagine. I've had some experience in some way, shape, or form. Come from a real estate family. My father came down to San Jose in 1971 as a real estate professional, and he raised us up ever since. So I've seen all of the good things, the bad things. When interest rates went up to 20%, when the dot-com bubble burst, crisis of 2008, what we're going through now with the pandemic, and I'm still here. I do other things too, but it's primarily real estate. That's pretty much my entire life. I'm the founder of the real estate educational platform 4 Data Points Academy. I personally mentor just over 350 people, and we don't have an end date. So I make sure that they have everything they need in order to be successful for as long as it takes. What that means is when they start with us, they're typically a beginner. We have some people that start with us that have been, flipping houses here and there, and they want to scale up in asset class, get up into apartment buildings, and learn other real estate investing strategies, which is really good. But then they become intermediate, which is a different type of learning, and we stay with them through the entire process. And then when they become advanced, we just start doing projects together, and we have a community developed, and so on and so forth. So, 4 Data Points Academy was birthed out of necessity. I just didn't like the way people were being, treated in the real estate education space. Half the people in our program came from other mentorship programs. So I know what's out there, and I've also, they've some of the what you guys would call some of the big guys have tried to recruit me time and time again. I've been asked to be on TV shows and all types of stuff. That's not really my speed. I'm here to train. I'm here to create opportunities for people that wouldn't necessarily have them, and I'm here to improve communities so they don't get pushed out for non-participation of the gentrification process. So, where do we start? What's up, Angel? Where do we start? I see you on Clubhouse. We always start with protecting people. How do you assess a deal? All right. How do you protect yourself when you are just starting out as a real estate investor? So I'm going to go over that, and then I'm going to make sure you guys have access to that guide. That is always something that I'm going to give away. Even if people have no association with me on the mentorship side, we don't do courses. We are a mentorship program. We are a long-term mentorship program. That is a professional relationship. I do not do courses. I have study material. I have course study material within our program, but that's not something I sell to the general public because I don't believe that's enough to turn you into a seasoned real estate investor. Now, if you see my eyes all over the place, that's because I've got about 5 or 6 screens up, and I may be fielding questions from all of the different platforms. So, but just feel free. I'll get to you. I don't shut down these live streams until all the questions have been answered. And if it is if we're going over and I got to go, you can forward your question to me, and I will make sure that it gets answered. Now, let me start by saying just because something is possible does not mean it's likely. Unfortunately, all the marketing that you guys see out there, they're marketing what's possible. So things like I've heard one person say that, your first deal should be no less than $1 million. Now, if you believe that, then there's not much I can do for you, right? But I show people all the real estate investing strategies so they can see for themselves what it's going to take for them to make $1 million. And then unfortunately, they finally make $1 million and realize it's not as much money as they thought. But they'll know how to do it, and they can adjust that schedule based on their timeline and their resources. All right. So when I teach the good about each strategy, and then I teach the bad about that same strategy. The advantage of that is I can operate in 100% transparency. Right. There's not one strategy that works all of the time. So it's my job to educate people so they understand which strategy is going to work when. You folks on TikTok, I appreciate you sharing the room. To that one person that shared the room already, you got some blessings coming. But go ahead and share the room, because the bigger we get, I'm not looking for money. I'm looking for power and influence. And I've sat in enough rooms with these city councils and these mayors, and in one case, the vice president of or the minister of interior, which is the equivalent of the vice president in some of these other countries. And the reason why I was able to move in these rooms the way that I have is because I don't care what the outcome is, because I don't need anybody in that room to further my situation. I don't have to be liked. I don't have to be, there's nothing, I don't have to cater to anybody. Now, obviously, we should operate with a certain level of professionalism, and we should treat everybody with dignity and respect. So I'm not on here just spouting off, the first thing that comes to mind every single time. So there is some tactfulness about the way that I deliver this information. But understand, this information comes from experience. This information comes from being a real estate broker. This information comes from being a long-term hold investor, investing in all different states, all across the country. It's teaching people how to invest without them physically having to be there, teaching people how to invest, when they need to focus on surviving first and not quitting their job and working 40 hours a week and buying a property and rehabbing it and offloading it 2,500 miles away. So we never know what it's going to take for somebody to be successful. So it's my job to prepare them for everything. Well, how do I do that? Well, we start with 4 questions, and this is also a learning tool, right? Now I'm going to get through these 4 questions because I think we should start there 100% of the time. When people come into my rooms, this is the most important part, because this allows me to protect people in my absence. One of the things about, what's up, Brandon? One of the things about when you're mentoring people and when you're doing these live streams and when you're speaking at these conferences, I try to simplify it as much as possible. The downside of that is some of these things can sound so simple, and then you get out there and get your teeth kicked in the real world because you realize that there's so many different variables that can impact a real estate investment. And keep in mind, there's a lot of shady investors out there. There's shady investors that will try to offload non-performing assets to new investors that are excited about getting their first deal. So this guide, and I'm sure a lot of you have it, most of you guys, if you're in my database, I used to notify people when I was doing these rooms in the morning. I don't do that anymore. I just kind of jump on here because, I don't want to spam people with that information. But these 4 questions are: what does it cost, or what am I willing to pay? Right? What does it cost if it's for sale? What am I willing to pay if it's not? What does it cost to fix up? Meaning, what does it cost to improve the property, which is important because as real estate investors, in order for all the creative strategies to work, you got to be able to make the property worth more than you bought it for. Number 3 is, what's it going to be worth when I'm done? You got to be able to understand your profit margins, right? You got to be able to understand your profit margins so that when you compensate people in the deal, and yes, you will have to compensate people because no one's going to work with you creatively when they can just sell it on the open market. So you got to make it advantageous for them to be able to do that. And then how much income can it generate? You need to know how much income it can generate, because you need to know whether you can keep it or whether you're going to have to sell it. And if you're going to have to, if you want to keep it, it's got to generate enough income to service the debt against it. So those 4 questions, we don't go past those 4 questions. If you can't find the answers to those 4 questions, go back and start all over until you can, because if you can't, then your risk just increase significantly. Amen. So we'll get into those in just a second. That number above my head, that phone number, if you text the word send to that phone number, I'll make sure I'll send you the download link for it. And again, if I never see you guys again, that's something that's going to protect you. You can actually go home, pick an address, practice it. All right. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. Remember, the sole purpose of that guide is to keep people out of trouble. And it's specifically for people looking to get into real estate investing so that they can see how to assess a typical real estate deal. Now, when you get into more complicated stuff, like apartment buildings and some of the other assets, then it still applies, but it gets a little more complicated. But I will go over the natural learning progression, right? So people come with zero knowledge most of the time, or they flipped a few houses. And most people, you can watch HGTV, and when interest rates are as low as they've been in the last 3 or 4 years, it's not hard to find a deal, right? You could throw a rock and hit a deal. But most people, that's where most people are at, right? Flipping a house, it's not that difficult, right? You can I tell people you can chat GPT your way through a house flip, all right? But a lot of people think that's the entire scope of real estate investing, and it's not. That's just a starting point. No one wants to flip houses. There's an emotional toll it takes on you. There's just too many things for new investors to have to deal with flipping houses. It can get really, really tiring. So the folks at the 4 Data Points Academy, what happens, they'll flip 3 or 4 houses, and then they're like, we have to have another conversation, man. We need to start getting into apartment buildings. And, that's what I want for everybody. I just don't force them into that. So flipping houses is great because there is training for that, that carries over into the apartment building situation. But my goal for everybody is to invest in apartment buildings because the road to wealth goes through multifamily commercial. All right. So let's go through the 4 data points. And I don't have my guide up, so I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but it shouldn't be an issue because I'm the one that wrote the guide, baby. Let me see. Oh, okay, good. I made that appointment. All right. So out of the 4 questions, I typically go to number 3 first. Number 3 is what's it going to be worth when I'm done? And I'm going to get into, what's up, Crystal? And I'm going to get into, the other stuff. I just want to knock the 4 data points out first because you can't get into the other stuff without knowing the 4 data points anyway. All right. So data point number 3, what's it going to be worth when I'm done? Well, it's easy. You just look and see what similar properties are going to be selling for in the area that you're operating in. And you want to make sure that when you're looking to see what similar properties are selling for, that you are looking at properties that sold within a specific time frame, right? I say the most recent 6 because an appraiser is going to look at the most recent 6 transactions and within a particular distance. So I typically go half a mile and I'll look at the 6 most recent transactions. And then when you have that number, just write it down. I'll typically write down the number 1, 2, 3, 4. So you write down number 3, let's say it's going to sell for 100,000. Okay, great. And then you look to see how much it will rent out for. Well, in this case, I'll go to rentometer.com. That's one of the tools that we use, one of the subscription services that we use to determine rental income. You put the address in, it gives you a range. So I'm usually conservative. So I'll put that number in number 4, data point number 4. I'll say it's $1,000. And then I'll go look at the property. Most of the time I can look at pictures and some other things. You guys on TikTok, thank you for sharing the room. I can look at pictures and do kind of a basic assessment to see what it's going to cost to fix the place up. Now, because I'm just looking at pictures and I'm not physically there, I'm not relying on that number. I'm not relying on that information. But I need enough information to help me determine whether it's even worth it to put an offer in on the property. And then if the offer gets accepted, then I have a separate set of due diligence that I look at to see how much it's going to cost to fix up. And then if it's out of whack, then I can just pull out of the deal because it's during what we call the inspection period. All right. Now let's say $30,000. Okay. For data point number 2, that's what it's going to cost to fix up. And once I have that number, now I can determine what I'm going to pay for the property, which is data point number 1. Now, new investors can apply what we call the 70% rule. And folks, this is all in the guide. I mean, I'm going fast, but this is all in the guide. You can download it. Clubhouse, you can download it up top. William, what's going on, brother? Michael, what's going on? There's folks in our real estate family. So once you figure out what it's going to be worth when you're done, how much income it can generate, what the improvement costs are, then you can figure out data point number 1. What does it cost or what are you willing to pay? Now, if there's a number attached to it when somebody sends you the deal, spoiler alert, that's what it costs. But you still have to verify to make sure that number is legitimate. So we use typically what we call the 70% rule. Now, once you get a little more advanced, you know when you can deviate from that 70% rule. But as a new investor, the 70% rule is going to protect you and make sure that you're guaranteed some profit as long as you don't mess it up. 70% rule says this. You take what the property is going to be worth when we're done. And in this case, we said $100,000. You take 70% of that. So what's 70% of $100,000? 70 grand. Okay. Then you look at what it's going to cost to fix the property up. And we just said 30 grand. So you subtract what it's going to cost to fix the property up from that $70,000. Now you're at 40 grand. 40 grand is your maximum offer price. That's guaranteed to build a profit in there. Okay. That's a 70% rule. Again, that's in the guide too. So if you guys are the type that are trying to take notes, just listen to the easy sound of my voice because the notes are already taken for you. All right. And then you determine, okay, well, 40 grand is my maximum offer price. That's data point number one. So there you go. Data point number one, what does it cost? 40 grand. Data point number two, what does it cost to fix up? 30 grand. Data point number three, what's it going to be worth when we're done? 100 grand. Data point number four, how much income can it generate? $1,000 a month. Now that we have those numbers, what do they tell us? Well, the first thing I'm gonna look at is data point number three, what it's going to be worth when we're done. If it's going to be worth 100 grand, I know I can get some financing for that. And I know typically I can get financing for about 80% of that amount. Well, what's 80% of 100,000 bucks? 80 grand. Y'all like how I use them easy round numbers. You can tell I still need 6 credits to graduate junior college. All right, 80 grand. I can get a mortgage for $80,000. Once I know I can get a mortgage for $80,000, what does that tell me about the property? All right, well, let's look at the information we already have. Maximum offer price is what, 40,000? Rehab is 30,000. That's 70,000. So the money I put in and the money I borrow to buy and rehab the property, I can pay back with that mortgage. $80,000 mortgage. I can pay off the 70. I walk away with 10 minus fees. All right. I got 10 grand left over, cash out, refinance. Okay. So I just keep that in the back of my mind. I know that that deal is good enough for me to use the Burr method, right? And pay off all the existing expensive hard money debt that I use to buy it and rehab it. And then I go to, okay, now that I can get that $80,000 mortgage, how much is it going to cost me per month? So I'll go ahead and put that $80,000 mortgage into my Zillow payment calculator. And it says, depending on interest rates, right? Let's say it costs me $700 a month. Okay, well, we already looked at data point number 4. How much income can it generate? We went to rentometer.com. It gave us an analysis. Conservatively, tells me I can rent it out for $1,000. $1,000 rental income. $700 is what it's going to cost me to own the property. Yeah, mortgage, principal, and interest, taxes, and insurance. Okay, that's a $300 net. Okay, so that deal, I get $10,000 out of the cash out refinance minus points and fees, and it generates $300 a month. Now, so when we use the 4 data points, notice it didn't tell us whether it was a good or bad deal. That may be a good deal for somebody. That may be a bad deal for somebody else, but it's up to you to decide once you have the numbers, whether this deal is worth moving forward. Okay. Now, notice in that example, we made $10,000 on the cash out refinance. The $10,000 is active because we had to do some stuff, right? We had to buy the property. We had to rehab it. We had to improve the value. So that's active. Now the $300 we net month to month is passive. Okay. So if you're looking to get into real estate investing and you've determined how much money you want to make a month, you have to understand the difference. You have to be active so you can be passive. You got to be active so you can set up that passive income. So that passive income is what's going to contribute to your quality of life. And you stack enough of that up, eventually you don't have to go to work. You can just go to the beach and check the mail every, 1st to the 5th of the month. Amen. All right. So that's the basics of the 4 data points. Okay. And it's not just the information that's right in front of you. It's what you don't see in the 4 data points. Actually, let me articulate that in a different way. I'll say as a real estate investor, you have to see everything. Okay. You have to see everything. Now let's take those same numbers. What does it cost? $30,000. What does it cost to fix up? $40,000. What's it going to be worth when I'm done? $100,000, and it'll rent out for $1,000 a month. Now, what if data point number 1, what it costs, was too close to data point number 3, what it's going to be worth when we're done? Well, that means I'm not going to be able to add enough value to pay off all the existing debt. As an investor, that's what we see from that. And if you're not going to be able to pay off all the existing debt, that means whatever money you put into it has to stay there. Does that mean it's a bad investment? No, it means it's a different type of investment. And I'll get into that next. And if the money has to stay in the property, then what data point am I going to look at to justify leaving my money in there? Data point number 4, the income that it generates. Because if I got to leave money in there, it better be giving me a good enough return for me to do that. Now, I'll give you another example. I'll go back to that Jackson, Mississippi example that I always go over as an illustration. The 4 data points in this Jackson, Mississippi property is this. Remember, for those folks just coming in on TikTok, the 4 data points is 4 questions that we use to determine whether or not a real estate investment fits in our buy box. Notice I didn't say whether a real estate investment is good or bad, although there are some real estate investments that all of us would agree are bad, but that's not the point. It tells us whether it's good or enough for us. So in Jackson, Mississippi, I had some students down there as a mother and son team, good people. This was early on. This was a few years ago. I flew down there so that they could see the neighborhood through my eyes, and we were just assessing all types of things in the neighborhood. There was a lot of opportunity there. And this was before Deion Sanders came to Jackson State. All right. So when I'm explaining this, just keep that in mind. What the neighborhood hadn't blown up yet. So we found a property, $10,000, $10,000 property. It needed some work, needed about $40,000 worth of work. So here are the 4 data points on that property. This is okay. I'll start this way. So $10,000, data point number 1. That's what it costs. What does it cost to fix up? Data point number 2, $40,000. Data point number 3, what's it going to be worth when we're done? $25,000. So look at what those 3 numbers tell you right there first. And you 4 people that shared the room on TikTok, thank you again. I appreciate that. I got something for you up top. So I'm just going to help you. All right. So what does that tell you? Those 4 data points. It says the property is only $10,000. All right, anybody, we could come up with that. It tells me it's going to take $40,000 to get it up to where it needs to be. Well, that's $50,000, and it's going to be worth $25,000 when we finish. So that means you're going to put in twice what the property is going to be worth just to get it rent ready, right? Now, again, certain investors would have already walked away from that deal, but you got to run all 4 data points. What's data point number 4? How much income can it generate? $700 a month. Well, shoot, $700 a month times 12 months is $8,400. $8,400 compared to the $50,000 you put in, that's 16.8%. That's a good return on $50,000. And that's just the first year because you have no debt on the property. So year over year, your return goes up exponentially, right? So that's a really good deal for a long-term hold investor. But again, let's look at those numbers and let's see what other information that we can get from those numbers. All right, the property is only $10,000. You know that's all cash. You're not going to be able to get financing for that. The property needs $40,000 worth of work. You know that's going to be cash. You can't get any direct financing for that. You know the property is going to be worth $25,000 when you're done because there's not a lot of development in the area and similar properties just aren't selling for that much. You know you're not going to be able to get financing because of that alone, because the financing that we use to buy it and rehab it is based on what the property is going to be worth when you're done. So you know you're not going to be able to get financing for that. All right. But the property rents out for $700 a month. So that for a long-term hold investor, I'll tell you what, 16.8% is outperforming whatever investment vehicle you have your money in. So in this case, this would be perfect for somebody who has, a self-directed IRA or index universal life policy or, one of the investment vehicles with living benefits that you can borrow against, because you can borrow against that, secure this deal, go ahead and bring it to fruition, bring it to market, get it rented out. And you don't care what it's going to be worth after that because you are looking at the cash flow. Okay. And that cash flow, you're going to pay back your self-directed IRA or wherever you borrowed it from. So that's perfect for somebody like that, because not only do you now have 2 assets that are going to appreciate over time. Now, if we'd have known Deion Sanders was coming to Jackson State, I would have bought the property. As a matter of fact, I'd have bought everything up on that street. All right. But these 4 questions help you navigate as a real estate investor when you're brand new, and it helps you. It's going to help you, all right? And it's going to keep you safe. And it's going to force you to look at information and uncover information that you wouldn't have known to ask about as a new investor. Amen? Amen. All right. All right, so just give me a second. I'm going to scan for some questions on the different platforms. And I think we're all right. Okay, now I'm going to get into the 12 things that your whole real estate investing world involves when you're first starting out. All right, Michael, we got to connect, brother. I was thinking about you the other day. We got to connect, man. I'm gonna try to get out there and do another workshop on the East Coast. I don't know what city yet, but I'm definitely gonna come out that way. We're gonna get back on the road probably. I don't know if this year, but definitely next year. And we're gonna hit Miami, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale. We'll do Tampa Bay this time. We'll do Charlotte, Washington D.C. Not going back to Philly ever. We'll do New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Houston. Always, I think this will be our fifth one in Houston. Dallas. This will be our fourth one in Dallas. Not sure. We tried to do San Diego, didn't work out. But we may do San Diego, Long Beach, L.A. We may do Oakland here in the Bay Area, but I don't know. I live in the Bay, so I don't know if I'm trying to do that. Oh shoot! You know what? Oh right, wait, hold on, Michael, because I thought you were. Hold on, I gotta fix that. I can't hear you in the. Okay. I thought Clubhouse. Hold on, Clubhouse. I gotta run you through my mixer. I don't know what's going on with that, y'all. Y'all bear with me 1 second. Y'all bear with me 1 second. Let's. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, Michael, say something. Sound check, brother.
Sound check 1 2. Come to DC. You're more than welcome. I sent you a
Amen.
text message yesterday. I'm in your city and haven't heard from you.
I didn't get it. I didn't. I didn't
Uh,
get. I didn't get it, man. Hold on. Let me check right now. Hold on. I didn't. What's the Mike? I didn't get it. What's the last four of your phone number? Just the last four.
5859.
I don't have it, man. Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't get a text from you yesterday. Let me see.
Yeah.
585. Hold on. 585. No. No. I do not have it. I got your name in my phone, so I would have seen it. I don't have it, brother.
Yeah. So it's going to 3024
3024.
877.
Is that what you text the 800 number?
Yes.
I don't know what that number is, man. I don't know. But that's not my number.
Yeah.
But look, you got my personal cell phone, Michael. You got my
I
personal.
don't think so.
Yeah, watch. Hold on. Let me see. Hold
This
up.
should be a text message.
All right, I'm gonna hit you up. If you ever forget my phone number, you can always call. Well, it's 408-318-5534. That's my phone number. But you can always call 833-367 Otis ODIS. It's like the bat. It's like the bat signal. But you got my email. You got all my information, man. Text me again. Text me again. But I got your information. I'm gonna text you. But yeah,
Oh,
I didn't get it, man. You know I would have called you.
all right.
That's what's
Sounds
up.
good. I didn't mean to disrupt, but yeah. So we're definitely I definitely have something set up for you. I mean, I have some very hungry colleagues that's willing and ready to learn.
Amen. Amen. So you said DC?
DC. I mean, I'm in Virginia, period, but DC is like an hour and a half from me.
Okay. All right. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. So I'll coordinate with you. We'll hit DC first. How about that?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. All right. All right. Michael and our real estate family, good dude, man. I wish I could have made that last event, man, but I just got so bogged down. It was it's rough. We had a hole we had to dig out of. So I appreciate your patience, brother. Let me see, Otis. What's your initial price? Is that initial price for to get into the Four Data Points Academy? That information is on our website. You can go to fourdatapoints.com, but it ranges 5,999. It depends on the level of support. So if you come in under the group offering, it's 5,999. That's unlimited. So there's no end date. So it's continued education for as long as you need it. I've had some people that have been with us that got 30 doors now. They've been with us like 4 years already. So, and we stay with you until every time you level up, like we level up with you, right? So some people come in wanting to learn how to invest in real estate. They've been with me so long and they've had some success, and now they're looking at getting into apartment buildings. So we're coaching them through that, and then now they're looking into getting vertically integrated. Now they're talking about buying in other businesses to help support their overall operation. So now we're helping them with that. Do you do installments? I may do two a month, but keep in mind, it's more expensive to do it that way. And, we assume, a lot of the risk when we do installments. But there's, I usually look for people that are really, really hungry and don't have the financial resources. I'll do about 2 a month just so they can, they can get in. So yeah, every once in a while. We only take so many people, folks. There's only, our whole organization, there's about five of us. And I know you guys always see my face because I can't let it go. I can't let the microphone go. I love teaching it and I don't want to give it up. But there's about 5 of us overall. And I know you guys have met Dr. Alfred Smith. Do I need to call you? No, Trey, you can just text that number right there or go to our website and but text the number and I'll go ahead and coordinate with you. Yeah. So, there's a few of us. We are branching into other legs of education. You guys know my philosophy. Real estate investing is great. It's not going to save you. It's not going to be the only thing that, contributes and improves your quality of life. I think you have to be very well-rounded as far as quality of life goes. So I can teach you how to make money in real estate investing, but we're also getting into personal development. Don't worry. I'm not the one leading that portion of the program. Because some of y'all was like, personal development, you just as messed up as everybody else. This is true. That's going to be led by Dr. Alfred Smith. And we're also getting into entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's really where my heart is. So people that are looking to start and scale businesses, we're getting into that. That's under the brand Venture You. And the personal development is under the brand Ascend You, all within the 4 Data Points Academy. We're also, for those, since we're on the topic, those looking to start or scale a business, we have our international business retreat, our first one in Medellin, Colombia, the first week of this year, Q4, October 1st to October 6th. Let me see. Karen says a little louder, please. Karen, are you, no, I think we're pretty loud. You guys hear me all right on Clubhouse? Put a 1 in the chat on Clubhouse if you guys can hear me okay. So we have our international business retreat in Medellin, Colombia, and we are all staying in the villa. All right, thank you, Roberta. We're all staying in the villa, and I have private chefs coming in, and I'm flying in consultants to consult on every aspect of your business. I would love to believe I'm an expert in every aspect of business, but I am not. And there are some, I've had to bring in consultants for my own business, so I wouldn't feel comfortable teaching those things to folks without them. So I'm flying in all the consultants. We got a private chef. We're going to have a good time. We're starting at 9 o'clock. For the first 3 days, we're knocking off at 4 o'clock. Then we're going out and seeing the city. We're going to be right in the middle of everything. A lot of stuff is going to be a walking distance. It is going to be a really good experience. So if you guys are interested, go ahead and text me. I can give you some more information on that. Or you can just go to ventureu.live, VENTUREUREU.live. I remember in grade school when they used to call you up in front of the room, you had to spell something and you get nervous. So I don't know why I just felt like that right now. All right. Let's get back into the real estate investing and the what your whole real estate investing world looks like when you're first starting out. And keep in mind, folks, we've got folks that are in our program. I have people that have flipped, 20 and 30 houses that come into our program. And, half of the people that are in our program came from other programs. We're usually the last stop, and I make it that way on purpose, right? I'm very intentional about making sure that when people come into our program, there's nothing else that they need as far as real estate goes, nothing. And if we don't have it, I'll go get it for them. And even if I got to pay for it myself because we don't have it, I'll go do that and get it for them because that's my reputation is on the line. I'm the last stop. I'm the end all be all. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. No, I'm not, Lord. I'm just playing, Lord. That's you. I'm just playing. All right. Let's jump back into it. Okay. Can we get into a phone call after this? Yeah, I've got a few calls lined up, Brandon, but I'll try to get you in there, brother. Trey says, is the flipping method better than the Burr method? There are no methods that are better than any other methods. And I get that question a lot because of a lot of what's being sold on the internet. There are people selling specific things. Like I saw a course the other day about the Burr method, right? And they were charging about $799 for this course, and they'll teach you how to do the Burr method. That's cool if it's worth $799 to you. But what happens when the Burr method doesn't work? The Burr method only works some of the time. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Nobody's doing the Burr method out here. The reason is because even with the highest rents in the nation, when you're paying $1 million for the fixer upper, and then you put $200,000 and $300,000 in it, great. Now it's worth $2 million. You can get a mortgage for 1.6. How much do you think that mortgage is going to cost you at 7%? You're looking at about $13,000 a month, right? So even when you can rent out a 4-bedroom for $7,000 a month, you're still in you're still in trouble, right? It's negative cash flow. So flips typically happen out here. So the BRRRR method is great, but it's just a tool in your tool belt. And as a real estate investor, the more tools you have in your tool belt, the more successful that you're going to be. So there are cases where the BRRRR method does work. And if I prefer the BRRRR method, to answer your question, I prefer the BRRRR method over flipping. If I'm flipping a house, it is just for a few reasons. I don't flip houses just to flip houses. If I'm flipping a house, it's either I'm flipping it into another cash flowing asset, which if you can do the BRRRR method, the end result is a cash flowing asset, or I'm flipping a house because some of the people in my real estate family in our program, maybe they were feeling a little stagnant. So I'll tell them, look, put your money together. We'll create a learning opportunity. I'll go flip a house. I'll take the lead on it. And then we'll go through that process just to keep people excited and keep money circulating. But other than that, I'm always going to do the BRRRR method when it's available. The only thing is you got to know if you can do it. And how do you know if you can utilize the BRRRR method? It's the 4 data points, right? You got to ask those 4 questions, and it will tell you if you can use the BRRRR method. For those people that don't understand what the BRRRR method is, it's when you buy a house, you rehab it, you rent it out, you refinance it, and then you repeat the process, the BRRRR method, okay? But the 4 data points will let you know whether you have to keep it, whether you can keep it, or whether you have to sell it. And you'll typically have to sell it when the rental income that it generates is not enough to service the final debt against it. So again, to answer your question, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. Know when to do both. All right. I teach people, we always look at the BRRRR method first. There's certain times, can I get an example, please? An example of what? Of the BRRRR method or when it doesn't work? Trey. So there are times when we look to do the BRRRR method, and because there's a shift in the market, right? Interest rates go up, buyers can afford less, and we get caught right in the middle of it. Then we'll have to shift and he said both. Okay, I could do both. And then we'll have to shift and sell the property because at some point the value has come down, the projected value has come down, and the cash out refinance that we planned on doing, it's 80% of the value, and that 80% is not enough to pay off what we bought it for and what we used to rehab it. So we'll have to sell it. So the BRRRR method, that Jackson, Mississippi example, that is a perfect example of the BRRRR method not working because we can't add enough value to the property. So when we refinance it, it's enough to pay off that existing debt. All right. Now the BRRRR method, here's an example of when the BRRRR method does work. So we run the 4 data points, and the 4 data points are the 4 questions for you new folks, the 4 questions that we ask to determine whether or not this fits in our buy box. So I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to write down the number 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's say we've determined that the cost is $30,000. The rehab is $30,000. The after repair value is $100,000, and it rents out for $1,000 a month. Now we already know because the after repair value is $100,000 and we can get an 80% mortgage on that. Well, that $80,000 mortgage is more than what it costs to buy and rehab the property because that totals $60,000. So we already know that once we improve the value to $100,000, that we can get a permanent mortgage for $80,000, and that permanent mortgage is going to pay off the $60,000 we're all in, and we're going to be able to keep 20. That's the BRRRR method right there. But that $80,000 mortgage, the payment on that, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, has to be less than the rental income that it generates. So maybe at 3%, that mortgage is only $600 a month, and we rent it out for $1,000. We net $400. But at 8%, that mortgage may be $900 a month. Well, now we've got $100 delta, right? The difference between the rental income and the monthly obligation. Now, some people may say, well, $100 a month cash flow is not good enough for me. Okay. So we have to look at, okay, well, how much money did you make out of the cash out refinance? Oh, well, I made $20,000 out of the cash out refinance. Okay. Well, I think $20,000 tax free because you still own the property. It's not a taxable event. I think that may be worth it. And you can deploy that $20,000 into another real estate investment that has a cash flow number that is more attractive. So much so that it offsets the unfavorable cash flow on the existing property. So many times it's not about the project itself. Sometimes it's about where that project fits in on a much larger scale, right? I've done the Burr method, and by the time I was exiting, it was negative cash flow. It was negative $200 a month. Now, any investor worth their weight in salt, when they see that on the surface, they're going to say, I'm not going to do an investment that's negative $200 a month. But what you don't see is I made $50,000 on the cash out refinance. And that $50,000 on the cash out refinance allowed me to execute another real estate deal where the cash flow was so good that it offset the negative cash flow on the previous property of negative $200 a month. So that negative $200 a month was really the cost of me getting the $50,000, right? Now, if someone said that you could borrow $50,000 right now at $200 a month, you probably would, right? If you're an investor, because you can put that money to work. So it's not always the deal itself; it's where it fits into the overall in the larger scheme of things, and that's why we look at the 4 data points. What does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? And I make sure that people know that first. Like, obviously, I'm on social media and I'm giving it away to all you guys right now to protect yourselves and for you to go practice. Not everybody can afford, $6,000 in mentorship. I don't care how good of a deal that is relative to everything else that's out there. I've been in a position before where I couldn't afford that. I've been in a position where I couldn't afford $100 for mentorship. And I would have loved if somebody gave me this guide so I can at least practice on my own and get better, because your situation is not going to be the same all the time. And then when you call me, maybe in 6 months, your situation changes. A year from now, you've already been active, already got your confidence up a little bit. Then when we talk on the phone, you understand what it really is. So you appreciate the conversation a lot more than you would if you were just coming in blind. So yeah, so the Burr method works. It works when it works. It doesn't work when it doesn't work. And it's up to you to know the difference. And for my real estate family, it's up to me to make sure they know the difference. So when we look at some of these deals, we'll go over them together, right? And we'll do it 1,000 times. Like we just beat it to death, right? Because I got to make sure that people aren't getting themselves in trouble when they're not in my in my presence. All right. Now, as a new real estate investor, what does your world look like? Like, how much do I need what software do I need? Like, what do I really need to know to get off the ground? And how much is it going to cost me a month just to be a real estate investor? Probably about $350 a month if you're active. Probably going to cost you about $350 a month. Now, let me see who's that. Who is that? All right. So what is that $350 a month? That doesn't go to me. I'm talking about just the cost of doing business, right? Now, my cost of doing business is through the roof, right? Because I am not just a real estate investor. I'm also an entrepreneur. So the 4 Data Points Academy is an entrepreneur move. Me as a real estate investor, I invest under James Street Capital. So James Street Capital is my investment company that has they pay for it pays for all of these expenses. So what expenses can you expect? Well, let's go over the 12 things that surround your real estate world when you're just starting as a real estate investor. And I made it easy because the first 4 things are the 4 data points. I gave you 1 point for each question, right? What does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? That's the first 4 things. So what's the next 4 things out of the 12? The next 4 things are all of the documents you need to get familiar with. Now, I have lessons on all this stuff, but this is something you could just Google, right? A deed, it's a transfer document. Anytime real estate transfers, even if you transfer it from your personal name to a land trust or an LLC or whatever it is, you're still going to use a deed. A note. Well, if we're doing anything creative, all right, creative financing, seller financing, paying out of our exit strategy, we need to know how we document the debt. That's a promissory note. Security instrument. That's the 3rd document. Well, what is the security instrument? Well, it's a document that when registered with the county, with that note, it takes the debt and attaches it to the property. All right. So if, let me go to Clubhouse. So if I say, Brian, I'm looking at Brian down there in the audience. Brian, I want to buy a house from you, but I ain't got no money and I ain't got no credit. Brian says, no problem. I'll seller finance it. All right, great. How much and the last document is a purchase agreement. So Brian says, no problem. I'll seller finance it to you. Then I'll say, okay, well, I want to buy it for 100,000. Brian says, absolutely, cool. So what documents do we use? I do a purchase agreement like I'm doing in any other case, right? We both sign it. I open up escrow. The escrow company, it's their job to check the property, make sure there's no funny business going on, right? Make sure Brian actually owns the property. And then we've got to manage that debt. So he's going to seller finance it to me for $100,000. So what do you think? Is he going to wire me $100,000 so I can then wire it back to him? No, that's not how seller finance works. Based on our agreement, we birth that debt out of thin air. So evidence of that debt is a promissory note. Now, let's say Brian doesn't know me. Brian's not going to seller finance a property to me. He doesn't know me. I could just go because he's going to deed that property over to me. What if he deeds that property over to me? I just run off to Mexico. Peace. Thanks. He got. No. So we got to have our documentation in place. So what happens is Brian says, I'll seller finance it to you. Let's go ahead and draft a note, promissory note. That's your promise to pay me. That is evidence of a debt. That's evidence of the debt. And then the security instrument attaches that debt to the property. So if I stop making payments to Brian and I go off to Mexico, Brian don't care. Through an administrative process, he could foreclose and get the property back. And I'm not going to get any of the payments back that I paid on it, right? So that's why it's important to understand these 4 documents so you can do the seller financing and creative deal structure and all those other things, right? Now, the last 4 things are, what is it going to cost you? What's the cost of doing business as a new real estate investor? Well, you got to have a internet presence, right? Because eventually you got to fill your pipeline with potential sellers, people that are in trouble, right? So you got to have a place for them to go to see that you are actually a business, you actually exist. That's one. You can get a cheap website now. They're getting cheaper and cheaper, right? You could do a landing page for a couple $100. You can go to Wix and get a templated landing page for like $15 a month, something like that. But where are you going to get all the forms? Now, when you do a real estate transaction and you open up escrow, the closing company, on the West Coast, we use title and escrow. On the East Coast, they use closing attorneys, but they do the same thing. They have the forms to do all the seller financing stuff, right? They have most of them, but you're going to need stuff through the course of business, like lease agreements and, promissory notes and operating agreements and all of these other things. So you got to e-forms or Rocket Lawyer. That'll cost you anywhere from $35 to $40 a month. So 2 things that we need to pay for: a website or a landing page. Just get a landing page. Don't get you don't have to do a full website. All right. E-forms or Rocket Lawyer. Well, when you run the 4 data points, you got to be able to see how much income the property can generate. So where do you get a rental analysis from? Rentometer.com. That costs you about, I don't know, $97 a year or something like that. I don't know what it is. It's very, very small. All right. Now, the core of our business, we have to be able to market. We have to be able to check public records. We've got to be able to check comparables on a property. So we need some software for that. PropStream, REI Pro, any of the competitors, that's for checking public records. PropStream has the best data set, in my opinion. I use a few of them, but I always keep going back to PropStream. That's going to run you about $100 a month, right? You can get it for a couple dollars cheaper if you use my affiliate link, right? But all those things will cost you, between $300 and $400 a month together. That's just the cost of doing business. So I tell people, when you are getting into real estate investing, if you don't have a disposable $300 or $400 a month, then you're going to have a tough time. Now, the folks in my real estate family, I teach how to survive when you're broke because you guys got to understand where I'm coming from. We don't have an end date. So our program is a long-term professional relationship that goes on forever, right? As long as we exist. And during that time, we're going to be with our real estate family during the good times. We're going to be with them during the bad times, right? Real estate investing is not always peachy keen, right? You're going to take some losses. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Why? Because there are things that are beyond your control, right, in this world. Now, we do our best to mitigate risk, but look, trust me, any seasoned real estate investor will tell you the same. So I teach people, okay, well, what do you do when you're broke? What do you think I'm going to do if, things go bad and, a bunch of my real estate family, lose jobs, interest rates go up, market tanks, all types of things, especially if you're not investing all over the country like I am. If you're just investing locally, that well can run dry. So there are some strategies that I teach, when you run out everything, you can't afford that $100 a month. All right. But I'm gonna reserve that for folks in our real estate family, because that's, when I teach those things online, it I don't want to give people false hope. You can't build a business model around those things, but you do what you can where you are with what you have. All right, we got another question. Lose risk. Are you talking about roofs, unforeseen house repairs? No, it could be things beyond your control. It could be interest rates. I was in projects in 2022 that I was supposed to exit by the end of 2023. I've had to carry those projects this entire time because interest rates went up 4 times. And this was a commercial deal, which makes it more complicated because the value is based on the income that it generates. Well, we had people move out because we were going to do construction, which devalued the property, and interest and or insurance premiums went up, which further devalued the property. So I've just had to keep it. No one knew interest rates were going to go up 4 times in a row. So there's going to be certain things that you can't prepare for. So, I teach people how to survive, because we call it a real estate family because there's no end date, and family is family. So whatever happens, I got to be able to help them through that. Right. All right. So those are the 12 things that your whole real estate investing world is going to encompass. Right. The first 4 of the 4 data points, you can't move forward without that. Right. You can, but it's going to cost you something. You're going to get hurt financially. Then the 4 basic documents: a deed, promissory note, security instrument, purchase agreement. We use those the most. Now, those aren't all the documents. Those are just the 4 basic ones. If you're getting into being a landlord, there's other documents that we have to use. So I'm just talking about the basic 4. And then there's the technology that we utilize, right? PropStream, rentometer.com, a landing page or a website, eForms, or Rocket Lawyer. Now, those are the basics. That's the real estate investor starter kit. Once you expand your business, you're going to need more, but you can earn a living with just those. All right. All right. What time is it? It is 7:54. We've been rocking out for an hour. Let me do a quick reset. My name is Otis James, full-time real estate investor out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Spent 2 decades in the multifamily commercial industry, overseeing $650 million in multifamily commercial assets. I'm a licensed real estate broker in California, licensed real estate broker in Georgia, former mortgage broker. We funded just under $1 billion in the 13 years that our small office existed. I was a notary and had a national notary signing agency. I am licensed in insurance. Let me see what else. I'm a long-term hold investor. I consult on multiple development projects, domestic and abroad. I have real estate in multiple cities in the states of Texas, Georgia, South Carolina. Well, I just disposed of South Carolina. What's that? Is it Missouri? Missouri, Michigan, California, where I live. Sometimes I got these little one-offs out in the middle of nowhere because there were some cash cows. So, I've got property in places I would never go to visit. All right. Shout out to St. Joseph, Missouri. No offense to anybody that lives in that armpit of a city. All right. Anybody here been to St. Joseph? Nope. I didn't think so. See what I'm talking about? All right. So let's get back to it. All right. So we talked about the 4 data points. You got to start there. You got to master that, right? 4 questions that we ask to determine whether a property is in our buy box. And I want to get into structuring deals creatively. Again, this is just a tool. I do not recommend trying to build out a business model around this, because that well will run dry really, really quick. You told me you didn't have much in Houston. I got real estate in Houston. I've got I got a single family home that I had built in Houston about 5 years ago that I rent out. I have 4 lots we're building 16 units on in Gatesville. There's a commercial property we have in in Killeen. There's a commercial property we have in Gatesville. I'll do some more stuff in Houston, but it's getting saturated out there. And I have to be really strategic about where I invest now, because 70% of my time goes to mentoring people. And some of the projects that I do that I'm putting together, the flips or whatever, I don't own when it's all said and done. They do. And we flip them and dispose of them. So that takes a lot of time. Right. So yeah. All right. I had some properties that I let some of my real estate family do their Airbnb short-term rental arbitrage. It didn't work out for them. Some of them folks owe me like, $8,000-$10,000 big back rent. Ugh. But they're my real estate family, so I gave them a pass. I think one December I was due in back rent. I want to say almost $40,000 across the board in back rent. And then when I had to evict, I had to turn the units. And one of them had been there. It was a single family home that I bought, and that tenant was already in it. So she had been there some time. And it was $24,000 just to get the unit rent ready again. And that was a tough month, man. Tough month. All that money I used to give away on these platforms, I almost went back and started asking some people, hey, remember that $3,000 I gave you on Clubhouse to pay your mortgage? Anyway, all right, let's keep it going. You folks on TikTok, I appreciate those, the 5 of you that shared the room out of all of you that have been through this room. All right, so let's talk about structuring deals creatively, because a lot of people are being sold on the clickbait stuff. The clickbait stuff is the headline that they use to get your attention. I can teach you how to buy a house for $500. I can teach you how to buy a house for $1. I can teach you how to buy a house for $0. It's all the same thing, right? It's not something that I would recommend buying a course for, because those opportunities are far and few between. And as a new investor, in order for you to be able to execute that, you really got to know what you're doing. So trying to build a business model around that when you start is probably not the best, but I'm going to teach you what it means. Paying out of your exit strategy is what they're talking about. And in order for any of these strategies to work, you got to be able to answer those 4 questions. What does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? You got to be able to answer those 4 questions for every real estate asset that you are going to consider, whether it's a single family home, duplex, triplex, fourplex, 5 units, 5,000 units. It applies to all of it. That is how you protect yourself, right? That's why you guys always see me giving this guide away that I'm referring to. And I know Clubhouse, you can't see where I'm pointing at, but it's above my head. All right. So paying out your exit strategy, you got to take 4 things into consideration. There's 4 components. There's 4 steps. There's 4 things that need to be in alignment. Okay. Now, component number 1, step 1, you got to be able to assess the deal to make sure you can do this anyway. So how do you assess the deal? 4 data points. What does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? So what are you looking for with these 4 data points? You're making sure that you can add enough value relative to what you buy it for. So when you leverage that value, you can pay off all the existing debt, including what you owe the seller. Because just because you could buy a house for $0 doesn't mean it's free. It just means it's $0 up front. Okay. So step 1, 4 data points. Once it passed muster, you can add enough value to be able to pay off all the existing debt. Step 2, they deed the property over to you. That is the biggest jump in imagination. That's where people get stuck, because that limiting belief, that little man that little man or that little woman inside you is saying, how's somebody just going to deed a property over to you? They don't know you from squat. So you have to know how to structure that. Well, how do we structure that? Well, we obligate ourselves to pay for it. We obligate ourselves to pay for it on paper. Okay. Well, what does that mean? That means we have to put a seller finance component in. Even if we're not going to make any seller financing payments, the seller financing component forces us to establish the debt and evidence that debt with a note, and a security instrument puts that debt, attaches it to the property. So even when they turn the property over to us, that debt on the property is still in the seller's favor. So instead of them being the owner of the property, they're now the lender on the property. And what happens when you don't pay your lender on a property? Foreclosed, right? So you give them the power to foreclose. And that's why they call it a security instrument. It gives that seller security and it gives the lender the security. That's what it really does. But it makes it so if you just run off, that doesn't mean that they've just lost. They can just go and foreclose on the property, all right? Now there's a bunch of different ways to set up that seller financing component. So you got to be well-versed in that. I'll get into seller financing last. Okay. I'll do that after this. Now, the third component is adding value. So you own the property now, you just haven't paid for it. So how are you going to pay for it? Well, because you own it, you can borrow funds to improve it. And when you borrow funds to improve it, then the value is going to be more. You know, you can refinance that once you've reached that higher value, and you can get a mortgage on it. And as long as the mortgage you get on it is higher than what you owe the seller, that new mortgage is going to pay off the existing mortgage, and the seller gets paid out. Now you own the property with that new mortgage, and now the seller's done. You're good to go. Now it's just a regular, it's all you, no obligations. Now you're obligated to the new lender, right? But not to the seller. And then you exit. That exit could have been the cash out refinance, or it could have been selling it. So 4 steps. Step 1, 4 data points. Step 2, take control of the property, have it deeded over to you, obligate yourself to it with a note and a deed of trust, or a note and mortgage agreement. Those are the 2 different security instruments. So you reposition the seller as the lender, and the seller just has to wait to get paid. Increase the value, leverage that value, pay off the seller, you're left with an existing mortgage. You're good to go. Now, that's how I teach it. I've taught that on my social media. You don't have to take a course for that. That's not it's just another tool in our tool belt. And you can do that with apartment buildings too. It's just a little different. But now I want to manage expectations before I get into seller financing. Seller financing is a quick conversation. I want to manage expectations because just because somebody's willing to work with you doesn't always mean it's a good deal. That's why you run the 4 data points to see what it actually is. Okay. And that doesn't mean that there aren't other costs involved, right? You got to fix the property up. You got to know what you're buying. Well, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a home inspection. That could run you $500 to $700 on a single family home. If it's an apartment building, it could cost you $3,000 to $4,000 for that inspection. All right. Another cost not directly associated with the transaction is, how did you find that person? Were you just in the grocery store and the person in front of you just happened to be on the phone saying, man, I got this property, I sure wish I could sell or finance it to somebody? Probably not. So you've got to have a marketing plan to generate as many of those conversations as possible. Now we're getting into prop stream and postcard marketing and getting the naughty list from code enforcement to see if there's any landlords that are getting fined and don't want to be landlords anymore, or calling the water company and getting their utility shutoff list, or all of these ways that we find people in trouble or find landlords that don't want to be landlords anymore. Okay. So there are costs involved. This just means you don't have to come up with the down payment for the property. You still got to come up with the closing costs, because you're still going to get title insurance. You still got to you got to pay escrow fees. All right. It's a few $100. You got to pay for a notary to sign off all the documents. All right. That's $100. You got to pay transfer tax, county and city transfer tax. So that's relative to the purchase price. So just because you can buy a property for $0 up front doesn't mean there aren't costs involved. So that's why you guys don't see me when I do my workshops and I teach those strategies. I always manage expectations. That's also why we have calls, and I talk to people before they join our program. We if you've been following me for a few years and you already know what it is, and you've been to our website and you see the brochure and you've heard me and you're familiar with me and you've checked our Google reviews, and maybe you've talked to some people in our program, or then I'm comfortable with you just going to our website and swiping your credit card. But most of the people, we say, look, don't do that. Let's have a conversation first, because I want to make sure that people's expectations are managed. Make sure they haven't been sold a dream somewhere, and make sure that they're not holding off on paying their mortgage so they could get in our program and think in 2 weeks they're just going to be buying a bunch of properties with no money and then paying that mortgage back or wherever they borrowed it from where they shouldn't have. Right. So we always manage expectations with every strategy, everything. That we have the freedom to do that because we teach all of the strategies, all of them. All right. I would my feelings get hurt if somebody in my real estate family goes out and has to pay for some education somewhere else about something. They should have came to me first, because if we don't teach it, we will teach it. I may have to teach something just for individuals. Like, we don't have a class on how to buy and sell businesses. But those few people that have been with me for a while that are, now a little elevated, they're a little more advanced, they're starting to get into the more complicated stuff. I teach them one-on-one on how to buy and sell a business. That's not for everybody. Everybody's not ready for that. All right. So that's one of the advantages of having a long-term professional relationship is there are things in the future you don't know that you're going to need, and we have to be there to provide those for you. And it's not a situation where we tell people to keep paying. I figure if you pay once, if you trusted us enough to pay once, that's all I need. It's my job to get you to the promised land, whatever it takes. A lot of people don't always understand that. All right, let me see. All right. David Lucas, looking for a side hustle? Start with $200 and earn up to $4,000 in 3 days. Man, it's a wonder how he has time to post if he's earning $4,000 every every 3 days. All right, I know that's not a real person. Is it a Cope down there? ICOPE. Join our room so you don't have to show up with them red tickets. You too, Jeffrey. You know what it is. You may have joined already, but go ahead and join our room. Now, folks, we're going to be here 7 days a week. Monday is kind of iffy, but Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to be talking about real estate investing. What's up, Nicola? Wednesdays, it's strictly entrepreneurship. Fridays is personal development with a gentleman by the name, he's in our organization by the name of Dr. Alfred Smith. And we're going to do this all summer. All right. We're going to do this all summer. Is it a bad idea to start with a future inherited property? It's never a bad idea to start, ever. There's no reason not to start. The only reason that I'll say don't start, let me contradict myself real quick. The only reason I say don't start is if it's too much of a stretch for you to pay for mentorship. I don't want people coming in that put themselves in a bad financial situation to get mentorship. Sometimes the focus is improving your current situation first. If you're at a job, I don't care what the job is, you should be working to get promoted every single day. I don't care if you like the job or hate the job. You're there anyway, you should be looking to get promoted. All right. So, we teach people how to make good financial decisions. Because if you make a bad one to get in, you're going to be stressed out. And if you're stressed out, who are you going to be looking at on Zoom calls 4 nights a week? Then we both going to be stressed out, right? So we don't want people doing that. We were offering financing. We were working with a third-party company to offer financing. I just killed that because there were some people I could see what interest. If you got good credit, it's lower interest, but they offer opportunities for people with poor credit at higher interest, and we get paid right away. And some people would say, well, that's none of your business. It's up to them. They know what the interest is. If they want to pay it, then I don't think that's fair. I don't think that. So I cut it. I won't even allow people to do that type of financing anymore. Right. It's a long-term relationship. I take on the stress of all 350 something people that I mentor. All right. So we don't have the luxury of, it's not a program where you come in, I teach you some stuff and I say, hey, go be great. No, look, 10 years from now, we still going to be looking at each other. I'm still going to be wearing the same black and yellow hat and black t-shirt that y'all always be getting on me about. Y'all know I got more than one t-shirt, right? Y'all know I'm not worried. I have about 60 of these t-shirts. Somebody was like, you ever go get out that black t-shirt? They was like, you are very predictable. You either got a black one, a gray one, or a white one. All right, I'm back. All right, I think we'll wrap up in a little bit, folks. 4 Data Points Academy, 4datapoints.com is our real estate, our mentorship website. Read it. We're very transparent. Check other programs too, right? We did. We checked other programs to make sure that we were number one. Now, I used to say, look, if you can find a better program somewhere, I'll pay for you to join. And nobody ever challenged me on that. But understand what you're getting, all right? And ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, on that when you text me or call or whatever. I don't get offended. I don't care how tough the questions are. It's not going to sound rude to me. It's not going to, it's okay. Some people don't ask questions, but I can see like there's some things that they want to ask because people are afraid. There's something called economic trauma, right? I've been bankrupt before. I've experienced trauma of losing everything and not being able to afford. I've been there, folks, and none of y'all have been broker than me, right? I was look. When that 2008 hit, when I say I lost everything, I'm talking about lost everything. I was watching HGTV some years ago, and I don't know if you guys remember, but it was the couple. I think they were from California, and they were like, we lost everything in the real estate market, so we decided to start flipping houses. I was like, that's a different, I don't know what definition of lost everything they're using. I didn't even have gas to put in the car that soon got repossessed. to get to the property to to look at it. Like I was on my parents' couch for 2 days, and then the Holy Spirit was like, "You need to get up and give us something to bless." And I went out and worked at a newspaper plant for $10 an hour, not for the money, just for the sake of working, just so I could say I was moving towards something. So, I get it. And so we don't want people making poor financial decisions to come up in our real estate. There was some tough times, man. I tell you, but I appreciate them. I really do appreciate them. All the seasoning comes from the tough times, not the good times, not when things are working out. I don't care if it's relationship. I don't care if it's professionally. So I learned to have an appreciation for all the bad stuff. If I buy a house cash to get a better deal, how would I finance it to pull my money out? You would just cash out refinance. You could do an asset-based lender, right? Hard money. If you're working a job where you got W-2s, you're not self-employed, and you've got pay stubs and tax returns and all that, you can go to a traditional bank, but they're going to look at your debt to income ratio. All right. Investors, the type of financing that we use, they don't look at our debt to income ratio. They don't look at our personal financials. They'll look at our credit score, but it's asset-based lending. That means they qualify as primarily on the equity in the property or the income that it generates, or projected equity in the property or projected income that it's going to generate. So that's why it's easier to buy an investment property as an investor than it is to buy your personal house. And a lot of people have that mental block, like, well, shoot, man, you talking about, do this and finance this and buy this investment property and this, and I can't even buy my personal house. Yes, because it's harder. Your personal house doesn't generate any income. Why would these lenders want to lend on that? All right. Matter of fact, most of them won't even allow you. They won't even finance your personal residence. So where do I go for the asset-based lending? You can go to privatelenderlink.com, private, like private jet, lender, Lender, link, link.com. It's just a marketplace where they all advertise. But don't do that without training. Well, don't do that without training. You will get into something and obligate yourself, get into something you can't get out of. Learn to be a real estate investor first. Because if you're savvy enough, you don't need a lender. Usually put deals together. I teach people how to put deals together that they aren't necessarily involved in. And for some of these properties, it's shifted into a buyer's market now. It's no longer a seller's market, folks. On TV, they'll tell you the seller's market is cooling off. No, it's cooled. It's a buyer market. It's a buyer's market. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for creating 78 ways to get it. Yeah. Oh, did you hear that from me, Trey? I think you're talking about how many ways are there to invest in real estate? And I said I counted a total of 78. There's about 25 that I can name, but yeah, there's like 78. Yeah, Trey been listening, huh? Yeah. And the reason I was saying that is because most people come in just wanting to, flip houses and maybe get an apartment building. And I always tell people, look, I understand that's what you think you want based on the information that you have. What's up, Ashanta? Based on the information you have, but you don't always know when you told me it was 79. You don't always know how you're going to invest until you become a seasoned investor. So I'll go where the money is. If I'm doing a project over here on the West Coast and I need an influx of cash, I'll just go flip a house somewhere on the East Coast and then bring that cash, put it into the project. I'm always keeping money circulating, and I never know where I'm going to end up. Right? I got property in St. Joseph, Missouri. I never even heard of St. Joseph, Missouri. I don't even like going out to the Midwest because, I watch TV. And, the TV shows I watched about the Midwest back in the day was not favorable. But you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to survive, folks, especially if real estate investing is your primary source of income. You got families to feed. All right. You got your family to feed. So you got to have the tools to be able to survive in any market. And you've got to have the knowledge to be able to go from market to market. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. A fixer-upper here in my neighborhood is $1 million. That's a fixer-upper. That means if you're using a hard money lender and you're seasoned, you got to come in with $100,000 just for the down payment and probably another $30,000 in closing costs. So if you don't have that liquid, then you're not doing it out here. If I got $130,000, why would I put it down on something here? I can get a 5-unit apartment building in another market free and clear. I can improve the value, right? Because I'm a landlord at heart. I was overseeing 3,000 units. I spent 2 decades on the operations side of multifamily commercial. It was my sole corporate job to make sure that these things were profitable. So why would I do that here when I can do that there? I'm here just from the 2 rooms I gained. I'm here just from the 2 rooms I gained. Okay. I appreciate you, bro. Right on, man. Right on. I appreciate that. All right. So, folks, if you, how do you find your deals? Well, now they're just in my inbox. They just show up in my inbox. But we typically come up with a marketing plan for people based on their resources and their knowledge. And I think, matter of fact, folks in our real estate family, this Monday for the roundup, we're going to go over how to find these deals, how to put a marketing plan together. We haven't done that in a while. So if you guys are listening, make sure you show up Monday. I'll send an email out to everybody, just letting everybody know. So there's a bunch of different ways to find deals. I use wholesalers. The problem with wholesalers is, they'll send me, I see you, Ashanti, really understanding the cycle of real estate is so important. Absolutely. So they'll send me deals, but you got to be able to run the 4 data points on these deals, because out of every 20 deals, 18 or 19 of them are trash, right? And so sometimes I have to train the wholesaler on how to assess a real estate deal so that we can have some synergy in our working relationship. I'm going to hop on Monday. All right, Tracy. I ain't seen you in a minute, Tracy. All right. All right. So 4 data points guide. Let me see. You guys on Clubhouse, that link up top, 4 data points guide. I know most of you guys already have it. You folks on TikTok, the number, just text the word send to that number up top, and I will send you the link. You can download the 4 data points guide if you don't have it. That's where you start, right? Teaches you how to assess a deal, teaches you how to protect yourself. Let me see. Facebook, there's not many people over there, and on Instagram, Ashanto's over there. So you got it, sis. If you need it, I doubt you need it. She's very knowledgeable in the real estate investing space, and she's man. Ashanto, if you could come over to TikTok if you can, because I want to introduce you to some of these folks. As a woman in real estate and general entrepreneurship, I've always been very impressed with her, to the point that I think I may want to work with her on some of the educational stuff for some folks. And I mentioned it to her, but I didn't go into detail. All right. So, what's up, Ann? How you doing, sis? All right. All right, folks. So that information is for you. I'm going to leave TikTok up, and I'll leave Clubhouse open. I'm going to end the stream for the other platforms.